Call the October 8th Administration Committee meeting to order. Roll call, everyone is here. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Carol, certification of compliance with open meetings law. We have complied. Meeting agenda has been presented. We can remove number 15. There's no reason to close session here. So then I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with removing number 15. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Ms. Dennis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, public comment. No one here. Oh, anybody online? I'm sorry.
No hands raised.
Okay. Moving on then to minutes from our previous meeting, September 10, 2020. Motion by Mr. Kinsley to approve as presented, second by Mr. Schleter. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, LCO College Library. We have this added from last week, budget discussions. Our representative is Miss Taylor, Tom?
Yes. So I'm one of the people that wanted this pushed to this month so that we can have a chance to address it. My concern is the form of request that the library is submitting is a reimbursement based on the circulation. And I don't see that formula being consistent with the other libraries with their requests. In fact, we had a report from from last month that one of the libraries had revenues that exceeded their expenses and is still asking for the same amount. And I'm concerned that, with this discussion of the college, the college's library being a tribal entity, that it tapping into county funds is outside the scope of whatever the county funds would be. But we have other libraries that are not necessarily county type of entities tapping into those funds without the same type of scrutiny that the college library is operating under. And so I had a discussion with the librarian. I don't know why she's not on this meeting. She was supposed to give some responses. I had some unverified discussions with her regarding what the budget is, because they've gone through layoffs, they've gone through some reduction in services through COVID and through normal operations, and those are the same arguments that are being presented from the other libraries and that the county board has justified in terms of its expenditures. And so I just feel that this is not a fair distribution or a fair discussion when these other libraries have other sources of revenue and that's not being scrutinized for their request. So I have nothing to add about this. I've got no comments about what their submission is. It's been received by Mr. Hoff, which is consistent with what their past practices have been. But I'm going to say this now, I'm going to be opposed to the expenditures that's coming out of the county budget for the libraries on the current face. And if I'm the only one that votes against it, that's fine. But I'm voting on it because I don't think there's equity among the libraries in terms of the support that the county is offering. And with that, that's all I got to say on that.
Thank you, Mr. Schleter. Ms. Dennis?
What does the college library get in other funding though?
It has, I think they get, there's some funding from the college itself because it is connected to the college. The college itself and the library itself is actually independent from the tribe. So there's no tribal funds that go to the college operations. They draw only simply from the college funds. And so there's some Title I and Title I, Title III, and Title V funds, which are federal dollars based on the enrollment of the college and then the students that interact with that. Otherwise, their public component is really what comes from the county and what can be matched from the college revenue. So I don't know exactly what the revenue is. It's something like, I think it's like $45,000 is what their budget is. And then The college picks up whatever the deficit is in terms of circulation and whatever else. And then they provide some assistance to like the high school, which is in close proximity. And then Woodagadating Library is also connected to that. But I don't have that, I don't have that in front of me to confirm that is.
Okay, this is the same person that was supposed to be at the full county board meeting with the other librarians?
I'm assuming so.
Okay. In talking to the other librarians who have talked to her, she doesn't feel that she needs anymore, that she gets outside money. And that's why this is only the amount that she has given to the county.
Well,
So,
I had a different conversation with her and that,
Oh.
and her representation, because I asked her why only this, and she said, that's what I've been told is what I can submit is the reimbursement. And so I asked her about her staffing needs and other things, and she said that that's never been a discussed expenditure because it's a tribal library. So, I mean,
okay,
we
I
can go back
think
and forth.
until we get her here, or you get her here, I won't be here, but
Well, we have a liaison too, and I tried having a conversation with the liaison, and she's actually pretty busy, so I mean, I'm not gonna fault her for that.
Okay, is there any other board discussion? I've got some people with hands up virtually. Mr. Schliger.
Are we talking about two different pots of money? I understand that Sawyer County, by state law, has to, if citizens of Sawyer County use the citizens of Ladysmith Library, we have to make a payment to the Ladysmith Library. Same thing with the Ashland Library and any other entities that our libraries that our citizens use. And that is strictly based upon the circulation numbers and the amount that the state says will be passed on to those libraries. Is that you mentioned circulation count, is that the issue here?
That's what I believe it is, and so I think that there is.
So that rule is carved in place by the
Right.
state.
So my point is that if that's what the LCO library is capped at requesting from the county, then why are not the other libraries also capped with that same thing? And why are we using county dollars, which we're already running at a deficit, to then supplement operations for a library that is asking for over and above? And so when we get this request, we're getting staffing requests, and extracurricular activities and whatnot.
Well, for one, these other libraries are in county and do not get to collect funds based upon circulation. That's only allowed to out-of-county libraries, and the LCO College Library is considered an out-of-Sawyer County library. So the other libraries, Winter, Hayward, are not eligible for those funds at all. So they're not receiving them.
Okay.
Okay, if I can interrupt here, guys. Tom, what is the LCO library request this year? And I've got the letter.
I don't have that right in front of me, but what we'll do for the county board, is we'll have that information as we present the budget and their request, but we'll also put in that calculation, the circulation calculation for each of those libraries, so you can see the difference between what the county is obligated versus what their requests are.
Right, and that came up in finance this morning to make sure
Right.
that we were above that obligation.
Well,
All the libraries.
we have to meet the obligation, but
Right.
as Mr. Schlender says, we go
Yeah.
above and beyond that circulation calculation.
And then can you also, I think I looked on last month's meeting where they were requesting less than they received last year.
I thought it was the same.
Was that right, Jim? Mr. Slender?
They had one year where they had a capital request that bumped it up on that. By the way, that was a 1 year kind of thing.
was year before.
All right, I want to go virtually. You might, the first one, who's this, Molly?
We,
Oh, yes, Dale, I'm sorry.
Yeah. we're not allowed to go above and beyond the county's rule on circulation expenses. That is set. The budget item, the line item in the budget that you're talking about has nothing to do with circulation, correct? The one where we are required by the state to make the payment for circulation, that's a line item Isn't there a separate line item along with the other libraries in Sawyer County? that
Well,
are
we
asking for money?
have it as one line item, but we've got some librarians on the line here too.
Right.
That might help with that.
Okay. If you're okay with that, let's go with Molly Jones. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. State your name, please.
Molly Lank Jones. I'm the director of the Sherman and Ruth Weiss Community Library in Hayward. And respectfully, I'd like to confirm what Mr. Schlueter says is correct as far as my understanding that Carol is requesting funds through Act 420 as coming from a sovereign nation, not Sawyer County. So the funds that she's requesting are the same type of thing that Winter and Hayward apply for from other counties whose constituents we serve. And for instance, we send letters to Bayfield County, Washburn County, etc. And those are based on the circulations that we make from those counties' constituents. So I don't know if that helped or not, but what Dale said is correct. And I do wish that Carol was here so we could get all of this, you know, understood. But Mr. Schlueter, we do not get other concrete funding, and by we, I mean Winter and Hayward, other than donations that we actively seek to try to keep our requests down for the county, and grants that fit our needs, which are kind of difficult to find because most grants tell you you have to use them for particular things. We are asking for the same amount, Winter and Hayward, as the previous year, because we will need those funds. Hopefully COVID will have kind of gone away, in so many words, and we will need those funds for 2021 in order to keep the library running and open.
Okay, thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Okay, yep. Okay, I'd like to go with Ms. Zelmer, please.
Thank you, Chairman Schuman. I appreciated Director Jones' explanation about billing other counties for circulation numbers and the explanation about the sovereign nation calculation. But maybe I've been confused all these years as well. I thought there was a similar calculation for the in-county libraries as far as what they can seek for funding based on circulation to in-county populations or members, you know, library users. Can we get an explanation on that? Because I did ask in finance if we could get that dollar amount reflected in comparison to what the libraries have been asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Tom, you care to comment on?
We'll have to look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get back to you, Mr. Schlueter.
There is a rule given from the state that the counties, this is going back several years, the river isn't always what it probably ever was, but I believe the state sets a limit prior years county funding for in-county libraries. You can raise that, but you can't lower it by more than a certain percentage.
That's still correct.
Is that right? Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. Okay, let's go on with Sherry McCombs, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I initially raised my hand because I did want to point out in the information that Carol from LCO did provide, she's legally required to tell you where she does get her revenues, and it is included in her packet that was handed out to all of you. So one part of her annual report that is required to be presented to DPI, it does list on one of those whole sheets where she gets all of her revenue from. So you do have that information before you. on another topic would be about the Act 150 versus Act 420 payments. But I can see that you're scrolling on the screen. If you go down another page, another one after this one, that's the revenues page for LCO, and you can see where they get their funding from on that page. So, so for Act 150, that is in-county reimbursements for CERC. Act 420 is outside of county reimbursements for CERC. Carol is applying under the Act 420 because LCO is a sovereign nation. And so she is following the formula that is the minimum set in stone by Act 420. Now, there is no limit to what she can request above that. It's up to the county to decide how much to fund above that, but the county does have to pay the minimum of 70%, which is what Carol is reporting to you. In county, Sawyer County has always been exempt from Act 150. Because of their support for the Winter and Hayward libraries. They have not had to follow Act 150 because they support more than 50% of the revenues. So if you do the calculations, which we did last year, the revenue that would be from Act 150 is so low, both libraries would likely have to close their doors because the county has always provided so much support. We're talking decades of support here. So that is kind of the legal ramifications. And one thing that I did touch on last year was encouraging the county to look at Chapter 43 for libraries, where it does state that this does not have to come out of the general levy dollars, that this can be a library tax levy. And it would free up money from your general levy restrictions. But no one wanted to really look too deep into that last year, but I'm encouraging every year to look into that because it could really help the county out in tight levy situations. Thank you.
And that's Chapter 43, you said?
Yes, and I can provide all the information that you would like.
Please. Okay, I gotta go with Mr. Schlenderville.
Ms. McCombs, that's an excellent report. Thank you for that. That was really enlightening. That's actually more information than I received from Carol when we talked about this document with her. So I really appreciate that analysis. That's really helpful. My last recommendation, which was the recommendation I made 4 years ago, I made it 3 years ago when we had this discussion about equalizing because Winter was not being recognized for their increases, whereas Hayward was being aggressive with what the request was. Is we have 4 libraries that operate in this county. They all want to tap into a source of funds that comes from the county. Ms. McCombs has demonstrated that there's a minimum requirement that the county has towards the library support. Why can't these 4 libraries come together and draw up some type of equal distribution or some kind of revenue sharing that we can make sure that because this really feels like they're competing against each other for dollars, and that because we have the college library being situated a little bit differently than the other 3, that they're arguing that almost against the college. And so I think that Carol needs to be included in this somehow, and I don't know why she's not at these meetings. She keeps saying she doesn't get noticed, and I told her about these meetings specifically, and if I need to, I'll bring it up to the college president so that we can make sure that we have a fair discussion. I don't have a problem with what's the minimum requirements, but if we're going up and above and we're dealing with a budget deficit, we need to be conscious of what that is and making sure that we're not taking dollars that we need for law enforcement or for the roads or whatever else to make sure that the libraries are operating. And I think the libraries need to collaborate in that request so it doesn't look like one is asking for $200,000 and explaining why they got donations and grants and why they need to keep it because we don't know what next year's going to look like when everyone has that same concern. And then we've got other aspects where they're asking for the minimum and just trying to make sure that they keep their doors open. So, Ms. McCombs, thank you for that report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schlenderville.
Yeah, just to clarify, we do consider the support to libraries as outside of the levy limits. And so that, doesn't affect the operating levy, but it does
43
increase the
already
tax,
explored
right?
that, yeah.
But the only, we do have Sherry's organization, that's within the levy limits. That's our interpretation, that can't be outside the levy limits. And I don't know if Sherry's got other information on that. Sherry, maybe we can converse offline about that. But I know that Mike Keefe has looked into that as well. But if you've got any other comments on that, we can discuss.
All right. Thank you. Great discussion. All right, let's move on to number 7 then, 2021 budget discussion. Mr. Hoff, 2021.
Yeah, so
administration.
what we've done in all the other committees is have the budgets for the departments that report to those committees. So the information that is attached to the agenda are the departments, which is basically the administrative departments, my budget, the accounting budget, the human services or human resources budget. And then there's a sheet just for the general government activities as well that aren't really within a department. So we included that in here too, just so that there is some oversight on the budgets being proposed in those areas. So if you've got questions on any of those, we can tackle that.
The administration budget, Mr. Hoff, that's kind of a little reflecting your new agreement and what else? Correct?
I missed the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. The administration budget. 21's request that just reflects that your increase or your renewal?
Well, that's like, that's my salary, that's related benefits, and I think there's, office supplies and whatnot in there too, travel, registration.
Okay.
All that's included in the administrative budget.
Town manager. Any questions from the board?
And then, as we discussed in finance this morning, we wrap all this up and present it to the county board next week. And we're still deciding on public hearing dates. Yeah.
Which we
We're
We
just-
decided on the 29th of October, 6:30, but now we had discussion regarding a possible jury trial.
Let's have it on Halloween.
So we'll,
Come dressed up, we can wear masks.
well, we thought about November 3rd, Mr. Schlander, but then that was thought of a little harder. So right now it's tentative for October 29th, 6:30, correct, Tom?
Correct.
For the budget hearing.
Yep.
It'll be a special
When is
full
the
county
budget
board
hearing?
budget hearing.
I turn it over to the county board next week, and then it's adopted on November 10th.
So with whatever hearing this, we have before November 10th.
Correct.
And we wanted it prior, Mr. Schlander, to the finance committee next meeting, so they could address it in public comment. And really bring it for approval. Go ahead, Mr. Kinsey.
Years past, we had the same night as the full time board in November. Also, for those other options.
Okay, any other further discussion on the budget? If not, okay, we'll move on to number 8 then, the Veterans Service Department report. Gary provided us with he's not coming, Tom?
I haven't heard from him.
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's in training.
Oh, okay. All right. Questions, comments on Gary's report? All right, then we'll move on to number 9. Information technology.
Good morning. Thank you. Got the report submitted here. We were able to wrap up a number of projects that we had on in the wings for a few months. Listed here on the screen, we're able to put some AV systems in, ambulance garage They need wireless internet, so they, also their NARC boxes could work in the garage, camera adjustments and so forth. Finally got some, in the sheriff's department, some equipment configured and up and running. Now, the jail lieutenant wants to be able to watch the camera systems from both the courthouse and the sheriff's department when he's on his phone. So that's all set up now, and we'll be doing that for other jail staff. See, the proximity card readers are almost ready for zoning and land records. We're putting some network security in place. That's part of the grant. That's what that intrusion detection install is. That's underway, as well as a formal security analysis. We've never really had one of those before, so we'll partly point out some things that can be improved. I don't know if they will, and we'll share those with you when we get those. There's a new jail inmate phone system that's going in place. We're helping them with that. That should, they mentioned also that's going to boost up the canteen fund because there'll be more people visits remotely. And otherwise, we've still got some pending projects. The DAR for the courtroom. Marge asked us to just hold off a bit because there's some other costs that will be incurred that we don't want to pay for those yet. Let's see. Other than that, those are the highlights for the IT department. Unless you've got any questions.
Board? Any questions, comments? Mr. Kinsley?
Good job.
Ms. Dennis, did you have anything? All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, human resources report. I saw Rose had to leave for a minute. She did provide us with something. Tom, do you wish to comment on this? I know we talked about that union discussion, right, with
Yeah.
WPPA.
Yeah, I don't have any other comments other. If you have questions, I can help answer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
what's recruiting contact tracer? What is that?
Excuse me. That's in the Health and Human Services for people who have a positive test, and then there's contact tracing that goes on. So those are limited term employees that help with that activity. So that's had an uptick in that, and so we need more workers in that area.
Okay. Anything else on the human resources report? Okay. If not, then we'll move on to number 11, county administrator's report. Mr. Hoff?
Thank you. Had a few topics. I just wanted to talk about some of the things going on other than what we normally talk about. One of those being the codification of ordinances. That's a project that we started a couple of months ago. We've been assigned. Actually, we're contracting with a firm that does this for governmental agencies. It'll streamline the ordinances, get them online, searchable. It'll really help the public and ourselves in researching our county ordinances and get them all in one place. So we've been assigned an attorney that reviews all of our ordinances. Carol had sent that to this organization. This is a 8 to 12 month process to get everything organized, but we're really looking forward to the results of that. Mike Keith has been working on the property insurance renewals. We've had to wait. Those are based on our assets, so we've had to wait for the audit report, which we did hear about this morning in the Finance Committee. So we've got a draft of that audit now, so we can firm up those values and get those insurance renewals processed. Health insurance, this is one of our big cost drivers. We have an 8% increase built into the budget. Currently, and our current provider, last year we only had one provider give us a quote because we did have some high experience. We only had one provider give us a health insurance quote. We're hoping for more providers giving us quotes. This year, our existing provider came back with a preliminary increase of 8.9%. But we think with some plan design changes and negotiations, we could get that into 5 or 6% increase. So I think we'll be okay budget-wise, but we did go out to market and hopefully get some other quotes, which we are, the due date on that is tomorrow. So by early next week, we hope to have some better information on health insurance, and we'll see if we have time to work that final number, if we get one, into the budget for next week. We're also looking at, related to the health insurance, the HRA, that's the health reimbursement accounts, and the flexible spending accounts. That kind of plays into the co-insurance and the deductibles with the health insurance. So we're looking at those two, maybe switching companies that process those claims if they're submitted for reimbursement to make that more efficient. So we're looking at that as well. Last week,
Tom, do you feel confident that we're gonna come in at that 8% you had already built into the budget?
yeah, like I said, the preliminary result that we got from our existing carrier is 8.9%. So we think we can get that, in that 5 or 6% range. And if that's the only bid we get, I think we'll still be okay. But we're hoping, the carrier we have now, is not as, I don't want to say it's not as good. I think we've got some better service out of the carrier that we had before. So we're looking to see if we can get back either with that carrier or another carrier that's a little bit more friendlier as far as processing claims and whatnot. So, so we'll see where that goes.
And right now, we're at that 88-12 split, is that correct? Is there gonna be any movement?
Employees pick up 12% of the premium on health insurance, and we're looking at that being the same for 2021. Yes.
We'll stay at that split.
Yep. Last week we were awarded the telecommuter forward certification from the state of Wisconsin. That's very similar to the broadband forward certification we received last year, 2 years ago. What that means is it's kind of a PR thing more than anything, but it does recognize that Sawyer County recognizes the importance of not only broadband, but the telecommuters and what that could mean to our local economy, and removing barriers for firms that want to telecommute in this area. And also, the broadband forward, trying to remove barriers for companies to come in and provide broadband service to our citizens. Public health ordinance, we had a revision that went through public safety and health and human services. We had health and human services meeting on Tuesday evening. And if you missed that meeting, it was the most highly attended meeting I think we've had in Sawyer County, not only in participants at the meeting, but also virtually as well. So it was a very publicly discussed topic, and it ultimately was tabled for 2 to 3 months pending looking into it a bit further. So, the revisions to our existing ordinance, and keep in mind, we do have an existing public health ordinance. So what we were looking for was just revisions to our existing ordinance that gave some legislative oversight by the county board to any local health order that went out. It wasn't about getting more authority to the local health officer. That already comes from state statute. So it had nothing to do with the amount of authority the local officer has, but just the enforcement of any local order and the legislative oversight on that. So that'll be reviewed again in a couple months as we move forward here.
And Mr. Hopper, Mr. Schlenker.
So there's a lot of information that is either wholly inaccurate or just being misconstrued. And I really think that it's incumbent upon the county board to kind of set it out. So we either need to do kind of like some kind of press release or some kind of statement detailing exactly what you said. I mean, and the few other points I would add is, and what I've been telling people is, there's nothing in there that we're changing in terms of her authority, but what we're dealing with is an ordinance that was drafted in 1981 that is not responsive to the conditions that are in place, and that we're trying to. I think it's our responsibility as county board members, so that no county employee should ever be put on a pedestal or left out to hang out to dry like we've done with Ms. Lyons and her responsibility as a public health officer, and that she should have some support from the county board, whether it's in terms of meeting or an endorsement of whatever the actions that she's doing. And then we got to make sure that we separate what the legislative function that she has in terms of issuing her advisory orders, either the instructions or the orders themselves, and then bifurcate what the enforcement component is, because that's where I think we're drawing a lot of conflict is she issues the citations, and that's the only officer, it's the only entity in the county that has that ability to make that rule and then enforce that rule. And I think that's where the misinformation is coming from. She has a awesome responsibility in terms of responding to the pandemic, and we don't even have clear guidance from the federal or from the state government. And so I think we need to step up and insulate what her exposure is to the public. And I would say that the way we do that, and this is going to sound contradictory, but there should be a public hearing on this. And maybe not right now or not right away, but there should be some kind of public hearing so that we can present this information out front, and then invite the comments, and then making sure that we've got input that goes back and forth. So that's what I would say.
That's good, Mr. Schwank. Ms. Dennis?
Excuse me, I did listen to that meeting the best I could, but I do have a concern, and that is putting this off for 2 or 3 months, knowing that everything about this COVID-19 is telling us this is when it's going to spike high. She already has this authority, but what's the plan? Do we have a comprehensive plan? Once this is done, where are we going to go? I mean, I think those are important things that this board needs to look at, but I disagree with the 2 or 3 months. Yeah, I don't think you can put this off.
Yeah.
First of all, one of the things that came up Tuesday over and over and over again was the same thing that Ms. Dennis was just saying. People were complaining that there was no direction, there was no plan, there was nothing in place. And prior to the audience recognition, both Julia and Tom spoke and talked about the fact that we can't just come up with a plan that is either contradictory to the state mandates, resolutions, or soon to be contradictory. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to try to come up with a matrix that everybody can follow. The next day, something from the government that just changed all of that. Julia really, really stressed that what her role in this whole thing is education. Letting people know how important it is to wash your hands, wear a mask. If you are comfortable going into a business that is not following the masking rule, don't go to that business. If you go into a business and the sign on the door says mask required, put the mask on. And that was repeated by Tom. We need to educate. They were doing all they could to educate the crowd in the courthouse that night. Don't trust me. Nobody listened. I'm not trying to disparage people who spoke, but they made statements that were 10 minutes ago, 35 minutes ago, answered by Tom and Julia. a lot of their statements were just off. The wall. There were a lot of complaints that Julia is not even a county resident. Why can she have the power to tell us what to do? Why can she have the power to give us citations? It's been probably 15 or more years that the municipal residency law is overturned. So we're within our right, and Julia has been quite the godsend to us, which Tom and Julia, Tom pointed out at the end of the meeting. We were pretty much alone in the room, and we all gave Julia a round of applause because a lot of the comments were throwing her under the bus. But between just complaining that she's not a resident and why citations, people, if you don't wear your seatbelt, you're going to get a citation by somebody who's not a county resident.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Thank you, Gail. Ms. Dennis.
Just one more comment. I don't think these business, and I'm not picking on just business people, but the comments that Dale just said, but also if we do nothing, if Julia does nothing or whatever, and these businesses, their employees, their staff are infected, they're going to have to shut down anyway. Correct? Or are they going to be able to stay open? So wouldn't you think they would want someone educating them and, you know?
One would think so. I agree.
Yeah.
They'll be quarantined. And have to stay. I gotta go to Ms. Slender.
So I did hear the comment about her living out of county and then having county responsibility. Isn't like 50 years, 55% of the property owned in the county owned by somebody that lives somewhere else?
Amen.
And that they don't even have a chance to vote in a county election because they live somewhere else. And we make such a big deal about, you know, a lifelong tax-paying resident and, you know, taxpayer dollars. And so half the property owners are not even able to participate politically because of the restrictions under the Constitution and whatnot. The other part that I have kind of an issue with, and this is where maybe it puts me in an island, but I think the message that Julia has is being confused with the enforcement that this ordinance imposes upon her, because she said she hasn't closed any businesses down, and she hasn't. And in my other capacity, I've had to work with her in some of the other similar type situations, not as a county board member, and I had to make sure I reminded her, because she's really kind of gun shy about, you know, making kind of decisions that look like she's exercising the authority that's statutorily granted to her. I think that we ought to make some kind of declarative state that says that she's going to make these advisories and not have the enforcement capacity, because the education is being muddled with what is the enforcement going to look like. And one of the things I'm trying not to take a side on this, because I believe COVID is real. I think that this is a situation that requires everyone's cooperation. But I think we're making it worse by not providing clear guidance as to what the individual responsibility is. So if she issues an order or an advisory instruction, that puts people on notice. That makes it so that what Dale was saying, if you go to a place and you don't feel safe, don't go in that place. And then if someone goes into a place and they're not meeting their standard, then they're responsible as that business owner, as that person, by inviting that person in and not following those instructions. What I think the concern is that how do we ensure that a business owner or someone else is complying with that? And I think that should not be the public health officer's responsibility to do that. I think she should educate, and then you should separate that so someone else has that enforcement capacity. Because the way that we have our Constitution set up, there is a lawmaking provision, there is an enforcement provision, and then there's an interpretation division, right? So there's a legislative, there's an executive, there's a judicial. So if she makes this policy, then someone else is the one that should go in and say, well, I got a complaint, or someone got sick, and someone else should be the one that responds to that. And then the DA and the judge can decide on the last part of it about what that looks like. And I think we should do that. because we don't
Excuse me.
have anything else.
Can I stop you for a minute? You can continue. Don't mean to be rude. I have to go. But I just wanted to say I enjoyed this committee. Good luck. You've got a great person applying, so.
Thank you.
Ms. Dennis, will you be at our full county board meeting next week? I appreciate all your service.
Sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead.
Now I pushed one person out of the meeting. But anyway, that's what and I think that's why we should have a hearing so that we could clearly delineate what the responsibilities are, because that statute was adopted in 1981 and it was on the heels of sexually transmitted diseases. And so that's why we have that language that's in place. And we need to put the pressure on the legislature to do something to modify that statute on the statutory side, because that's their responsibility. And we're so worried about masking that we should be looking at what the statute says, because that binds us. That's exactly what Dale was talking about. We can't do something that modifies that. But what we can do is clarify and bifurcate what the responsibility is. So that's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Sawyer.
Like, one of your comments was on what she can't do, and actually she does have the right as a public health officer to shut down businesses. She goes into a restaurant and the kitchen situation is so egregious, so many violations, she can just shut them down right now. And the other, so there is an entity in Sawyer County, other than law enforcement citations. The other entity is the zoning department. They do their own citations. So some of what the people were saying on Tuesday is true, perhaps taken out of context, but was true when they said, we don't want her shutting down our businesses. It's true that she does have the power.
Okay, Mr. Hoff.
Yeah, just to summarize this topic then, the meeting that we had on Tuesday, we did learn about communication in a couple of different ways. As Mr. Schleinder said, we probably do need to get a different method of communicating, what this is all about out to the public. But we also heard from the public, we need to improve our communication to the business community and to the citizens as well. So we did learn some things out of that meeting, and we'll try and learn from that. Any other questions on that topic?
Well, I'd just like to add that I think Mr. Schlender's idea of a public hearing is excellent. And I kind of agree with Ms. Dennis that waiting 2 to 3 months is probably too long. So as Health and Human Services Board Chair, I feel we're going to look at this at our next meeting and possibly look at scheduling a public hearing and doing more education about what these revisions actually mean. Because I think that was a big problem with it. They didn't understand that they were actually granting oversight of your elected officials by approving some of these revisions, which are not there now, correct?
That is correct. And so the ordinance that we have now, we do have an ordinance and the statutes that give the authority to the health officer to write orders. And with the Palm decision, there just became a question of, are these things enforceable if you don't have an ordinance? And that's still in question. So the advice is to do a revision to your ordinance to specifically state that, to make sure that everyone understands. So even without doing the revisions, can you still write an order? Yes.
Yep.
So anyway, enough about that.
Yeah, thank you. Very good.
We've got a group, the WCEA, that's the Wisconsin Counties Executives.
Oh, wait, Tom, before you go on to that, the COVID-19 issues, Andrea Palm's new and latest order just a couple days ago, how does that affect local government?
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
25% rule.
I skipped over that because I had all this other stuff written down as we were talking here. But COVID-19 issues, right before we headed into that meeting on Tuesday, the governor came out that afternoon with a different order limiting public buildings to 25% occupancy. So this is the way our day goes, and that generates a lot of questions from businesses like, okay, what does that mean for us? What do we need to do now? And So, you know, a lot of time then gets allocated to education on that issue. And you talk about, you know, closing down businesses. Well, you know, that's some of that activity is going to make it very difficult for businesses to, you know, stay in business when they can only have 25% of their capacity to do their business, you know, and that's where the business community has a problem. It's like, you know, they're having a hard time surviving, but what's the alternative? You know, there isn't a magic answer that's going to, you know, suit everybody. So trying to find that middle balance is the difficult part. Moving on.
Yes.
Okay. WCEA, Wisconsin Counties Executive and Administrators, that's, you know, like people in my position around the state, 72 of us roughly that get together. Normally we meet during the WCA conference, which there wasn't one this year, so we've been doing some things virtually. We do talk once a week as a group via Zoom. But developing a list of legislative priorities, you know, the Wisconsin Counties Association does that through, you know, the general organization, but we as administrators and executives also, you know, have come up with a list of priorities. And because a lot of the things that we talk about internally in our group are things that people really don't care to learn about, like the mechanics of the levy limit. You know, we know what a levy limit is, but what goes into that, and what the statutes say and how we could adjust the statutes that affect that calculation. You know, there's only 72 people in the state that fill out that levy limit worksheet, and it's, you know, so there's just some things that don't hit, you know, the board level that we need to bring to the attention of legislators. So that's the intent of that effort on our part. So, you know, that's just an ongoing process.
So what are the two top priorities that you're thinking?
Well,
I hope it's out of county.
yeah, that
Mental health.
the mental health issue is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
There's about 20 of them, I think, that we've got position papers on. And so we're working through those.
Okay.
But mental health is certainly one of the issues. We've had, you know, some talk about the Perch Lake situation, the high water levels on Perch Lake. We've been investigating that as well from the county's perspective, and we should see something back from that investigation probably within a week or two, and we'll update the board when we get that information. Like I mentioned before, you know, Cindy and payroll will be moving from the clerk's office into the accounting office. During the audit report this morning, we talked about, you know, efficiencies and some of the things that they look for in audit as far as, you know, duties and whatnot. So, you know, this is an effort just to try and streamline some of those processes and get Mike a little bit of help in some of the activities and reports and reconciliations, you know, that occur, especially with the payroll system. The Second Circuit Court courtroom update. We've got the agreement with the city that is being worked on. We'll be talking about that at the county board, and the city is going to be ratifying that as well, which would allow us to proceed with the 5th Street California Avenue extension. Pardon me? The annexation? Well, it's not an annexation, but it's a vacation of 5th Street and the extension of California Avenue.
So what does that put us on in terms of the courtroom development? We're not debating what I'm doing, right?
We're moving forward.
Yeah, the direction, I mean, we're still working on the direction from the resolution passed in 17 that says you are providing financial and infrastructure support for a Second Circuit Court. So, you know, we're still proceeding in that direction. I believe somebody makes an announcement after November 10th on the remaining 4 circuit courts for that 3rd year, of which we were tentatively identified as one, provided that we were working on our facilities. So we are working on our facilities.
If I may add, last night, Public Works, we accepted a proposal from the city, which they have this coming Monday night to sign and say, yes, you can move forward with that. We found a few small errors in it, and that's going to be corrected. Hopefully for them, and they'll be in front of the full board on Thursday.
Correct.
We'll help you understand it.
We've identified a few MOUs that we need to update before the end of the year with extension.
Tom, wait,
economic
just 1 second. Did you mention about the financing of this and issuing of debt? Or is that a month away
development.
or more?
Well, probably more. I mean, where we're at is we've got to work with the architect or, the engineers for what that addition is going to look like. I mean, we've got a placement of it now. We've kind of determined, the square footage works for the amount of space a courtroom and facilities take up. Now we just need to clean that up and make sure that it has in it what we want in it. And then that has to get approved by the district or the state or something because it's, a state.
District Court Administrator.
Yeah, that guy. So, we got to work through that, and then the funding of that, comes from determining the final cost. So we'll have the cost of that facility, we'll have costs for the infrastructure, the water main, street extension, those kinds of things. And then we'll proceed with securing the debt for that, to pay for that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I don't want to get too in depth with it. Is you recall we would get these booklets showing online what the building was going to look like, similar anyway. In there, it always stated the percentage that they were going to charge us, and they stated 20%.
I can comment on that. So the building costs that they provided, these things that we had listed, a $6 million project, and that included 20% of non-construction costs. So those non-construction costs that they identified or put an estimate, the 20% estimate, that's for like the AV equipment, the chairs, the benches, all of that stuff that's not like the floors and the walls. That's what that 20% is. So as we identify not only the space, we need to identify, the AV equipment and all that stuff. So then, they've got a way to do that and calculate the cost for that. And the architect fees and contractor fees, that's included in that 20% too, but it's also the other stuff.
Thank you for spelling that out, because I thought that's what we're going to pay the contractor. That's what I wanted to.
Right,
discuss.
and you had asked that question, and I did ask that, and that's what that 20% is, and that they've got a way of calculating that out for courts as far as what you need. And,
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, thanks.
all right. Justice Point, we do need to talk to Justice Point. I think we tried to get a meeting, and then we kind of fell through as far as.
Yeah, you skipped number 11, Tom. We interrupted you with MOUs.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, well, I did start to talk about it, and I mean, that's all I really wanted to mention is that there are documents that we'll need to get going here in November and December. Get them in place before the beginning of the year.
And I did say, Mr. Slender, that the seed has been planted, so we just need to roll with language and bring it to a vote. Okay?
Good luck.
Not that we're just sitting on it,
Good luck.
yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Tom, sorry.
Yeah, so Mr. Slender will need to, he wanted to talk to Justice Point before.
That's the three of us. We guys sit down with Justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can work that out offline. Keep in mind, WCA virtual meetings, because there is no annual conference this year, they are running those virtual meetings. I think they're on Monday mornings. So if you get your WCA emails, if there's a topic that's of interest, you can register for those. We've been talking a lot about the airport projects, a couple of big projects on the horizon here. But they're also doing a boundary survey, which is part of that. And there may be some easements that we need to correct. There was a realignment of the road there a couple of years ago or more. But there's some easements that we may need to clean up because of that. So we're looking at that. And the 21 budget, we don't want to talk about that anymore unless you want to.
Good job.
Or any other topic you want to discuss, we can do that as well.
Well, I like what I heard in finance this morning regarding the 21 budget and the debt number that we were looking at issuing debt for, so.
Yeah, it is, a change in philosophy for us. But it's where we're at financially with the limits that we have.
Understand. Anything else for Tom?
Tom, you do a really good job. I'm also
Yeah.
impressed with what you.
I was just gonna say that. Excellent report.
And the amount of stuff that we deal with, I mean, we've all gotten the emails and the conversations and the text messages and the phone calls and the slight interruptions when you go to gas stations and that, you get that for all of us. So I appreciate what you do. And, you go ahead and take the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Oh, you're generous. You never give us that. Tom, did you want to mention anything regarding what happened at Public Works last night about the airport hangars that's coming? It's coming to full county board. This is my admin team. I think they should be aware, somewhat aware.
We did that in closed session,
No,
right?
we made a motion in open session.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it's coming to county board here in a week,
Okay,
so.
right. So at the airport, there's a number of hangars that people lease from the county. So that land at the airport is county land. And there are hangars out there for airplane storage. And those hangars are built by individuals and they lease the land that they sit on. So occasionally, and there's only so many hangars at the airport and there can't be any more hangars because there's no more space for any more hangars. So there is some value in those hangars for people who want a hangar. And there's a person or a company that wants to sell their hangar, and Hayward Aviation is interested in buying that hangar. And within all of those leases is a provision that the county has the right of first refusal. So any hangar that comes up for sale, the county has the right to purchase it. So the hangar that's for sale, that's what's going to come before the county board next week is that right of first refusal on, do we want to get into the hangar business or do we want to let a business conduct the business of storing airplanes?
We can turn a profit by somebody else using it.
Yeah, and then we would, work that into the FBO agreement, the fixed base operator agreement, and revenue share with any potential revenue loss of that.
Well, I'm all about, making them break even or sustainable. When I mentioned that last night, then, so anything we could do to offset some of the county support that goes to the airport, I know they're important to us, but I think I'd be favorable on
So coming from the board Thursday night, it'd be two steps in that process. One is the first refusal, and the second is, I don't have the words written in front of me, but I wrote it down last night.
Assignment of lease.
Pardon?
Assignment of lease.
Sign on lease to Hayward Aviation. And then next month will be two more steps to come.
that. Good, that's a good briefing. Okay. Good time. Thank you, appreciate that. Well, we had our last meeting, so took care of that. Future agenda items. Anybody, anything?
So one of the things, and I'm just going to put this right in the 14, either one. I think we should. I think we should open up a discussion for some of the restructuring of the committees. And the only reason why I say that is I really think that I think your committee chairs should meet with the board chair maybe once a month and have that either a separate committee or some type of way that we can discuss what is ongoing issues and either solve some of the jurisdictional questions or something, because I think that we're having multiple committees work on different issues, but they're coming at a different rate and different method of delivery, and that puts pressure. So like I had ton of people at public safety and public health ordinance when it wasn't on our agenda. And I really tried to explain that what the process is. And so I think that if the board chair has a chance to meet with committee chairs and discuss agenda items or, different issues, I think that would be beneficial. And I think that's something that we should probably put in front of the full board for consideration.
Any other matters for discussion on?
Like to add with what Mr. Slender said.
Absolutely.
We used to do that. And it used to be, I think it was called administrative committee. And then back a few years is when we changed the committee assignment around. But that was beneficial because on administrative was all the chairs of all the committees. And that helped move things along quite well, I thought. But it's something we went away from.
Well, I have 4 chairs.
Pardon?
You 2 are chairs, Gail's a chair. I like that idea. You mean maybe we could add it maybe 2?
Well,
Could we add an agenda item to the admin committee, Jim, and invite?
I just think that you should have, see, Paulson's a chair. I got econ and public safety. Dale's got health and human services.
Ron,
Public Works. Who's got land and water? Paulson.
Good guy.
And then Buckholz has got zoning. So I think that, I don't know if you put that as an agenda item because that discussion might take longer. So if you had those in a separate meeting, that's how I would recommend it.
Something that might follow admin?
Follow admin or it's something that goes on before the full county board meeting or before the next committee, or maybe after the county board meeting, but before committee week. So that you don't make another meeting that everyone has to jam, but make it prior to the committee stuff going on. So public safety is the first one up. So as long as that chairs meeting happens before that, so that how that ever trickles into the different committees, that's one recommendation. It's based on people's availability.
let's talk about that a little bit. So an example, you always meet the first Thursday of the month. So maybe like the last week of the month. But I wouldn't want to assign it to a committee yet. I would say, I'm just thinking it through. Maybe we should try a meeting 2 or 3 months in a row and see how it goes before we say, yes, we want to go have a full-time committee. Just to feel it out, see how things go. Right? So Jeff, I agree with that. So Dale, I don't know if you got it, but I'm asking for consideration for the board, for the committee chairs to meet with the board chair and to discuss issues that are either going to be pertinent in the committee or to solve different jurisdictional questions. And probably the committees are set up before we changed the format. The administrative committee was all the chairs, and there were 7 at that time. I thought it was productive.
Keep in mind the committee structure is outlined within the board rules. So if you look at your board rules, then if you wanted to make a change, you could do it through updating the board rules.
Would we have to update the board rules if we just temporarily met 2 or 3 times to scale things?
I would believe the chair could call a special meeting. Basically you're just missing Buckholz and Paulson from this committee, and now there's an opening on this committee as well. So
Thank you.
There goes the last whole free week I have.
We did good then.
Yeah. We're gonna look at that.
Trying to find it.
I was thinking the same thing. You guys.
That's what happened when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You lose something.
All right, any other, thank you. Any other matters for discussion on? Do you have anything, Mr. Fliger? No. Discussion on, no. Okay, if not, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.